So I'm not tipping anymore. I'm done. I'm out. Used to be you would give a tip if somebody gave exceptional service. When was the last time you got exceptional service anywhere? And it's just expected. They bring you the bill at the end and they're like, here, just fill this out. 20%, 25%. No, you did your job. They made food. You carried it to my table. You got me a Diet Coke. Thank you. That was your job. You don't get 25% because you did your job. And I'm not the bad guy here. I'm not. If you own a restaurant, just tell me what it costs. I don't want people to go hungry. What does it cost for me to get my food and also so that the wait staff doesn't have to join the cartel, do some Lord of the Flies, Oliver Twist? Like, I want people to be taken care of. Just tell me what it costs.
Welcome to Make Gains, the channel where we break down money, mindset, and moves you can make to level up your life. I've got a spicy one today. We're going to be talking about tipping culture. Let's get into it.
Wow.
I mean,
That's real childish.
you didn't want to tip me,
That's
right?
real childish.
Oh
my God.
A tip is
It's that
optional.
simple.
A tip is optional.
I literally asked you if you tipped in the app. You didn't tip in the app.
It doesn't
I asked
matter.
if you're
It's
gonna give me cash
optional.
for
Do you know
the
what
tip.
optional means?
You're a
Wow.
monster.
Yeah, I am serious. I am serious because why
Look,
wouldn't you tip me? If
give
you get a
Give me the
service,
coffee.
you tip your
Give
service.
give me our coffees.
No, I'm not.
Why do
giving
you
to
feel so entitled?
I
Like,
don't
you
feel
expect a
entitled.
tip.
You feel entitled that
So I don't know if you're not from around here,
No.
but it is customary
Okay.
to tip your service workers. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So
Okay.
you need to tip me before I leave your table.
All right.
Because I feel like if I walk away from your table, that you're not going to tip me.
Okay, yeah. No, we're not because we paid for the sandwich already.
Right.
All right, you get paid.
Pay me for
You-
your sandwich.
You get paid out of the pay that we paid for the sandwich.
No. That
Okay.
is not how it works.
Oh.
I'm going to take this.
Oh.
I hope this is a skit, but it really wouldn't surprise me if it's not, because I do feel like servers have much more attitude than they did 10 years ago. But the other thing I want to bring up here is this isn't a paper bag. If somebody's handing you a paper bag, I don't know that you should tip them, right? Like if you go to McDonald's and place an order and somebody hands you a bag, I don't believe you should be tipping those folks. They didn't do a real service to you. That's transactional. This appears to be also, but the attitude of that waitress is out of control. And if I were the owner of that restaurant, I would not want her working for me. Even though she might feel like she needs a tip for handing him that bag with a sandwich in it, to stand there at somebody's table and demand a tip is unacceptable.
Tip no matter what. I agree with that. I was a server when I was in college, first at Buffalo Wild Wings, then at the Cheesecake Factory. People who do not tip, for me, were always the people that were running me into the ground. Talking about you had no time for any of your other tables because this table, and I hear you, if you get bad service, give them 10%, 12%. But to not tip is crazy to me. Have you never had a bad day at work? Have you never had a lazy day at work? Have you never had an attitude for a few hours at work? Now imagine you just don't get paid for that time. If you've never had a job that deals with the general public, can't possibly imagine what servers and other people who deal with the general public go through. And just look at TikTok. Look at the crazy people on TikTok. Those are the people you have to wait on. The expectations are ridiculous sometimes. Just view
She's
it
not
as your
wrong.
good deed, and hopefully down the line you will be blessed when maybe you did not have your best day.
Yes, the public is crazy. I have worked with the public in many jobs. I have done customer service over the phone. That is a rough job. The public can be buck wild sometimes. But if a server is having a bad day, they need to go home, because I do believe that your tips should be based on the quality of service that you provide. So if you go to a sit-down restaurant, I do believe you should tip. So let's get that out of the way. I do believe you should tip. And if you don't believe that you can tip, you probably shouldn't be going to that type of restaurant. However, if I get horrible service, and I'm not talking about just slow service, because that happens all the time. If I get horrible service, I do not have a problem with someone not giving the waitress a tip. Okay, no, that's only for horrible service. If you're slow, I don't think 20% is good. I think you need to be working for a tip. So at what point did it become 20%? I remember I feel like it used to be 10%, and then it was 15, and now it's 20, and that's just expected. So regardless of how long you have to wait for somebody to come take your order, or you can go the whole meal without getting a refill on a drink, and people expect a 20% tip, that to me is a little bit crazy. And that's where this tipping culture is out of hand, in my opinion. Now, I know a lot of you are going to have a differing opinion. I'd love to hear your opinions on there. I do believe that as a people, we need to make gains financially, but that doesn't mean being cheap. And that doesn't mean not being generous. Being generous is important. And if somebody does give you extraordinary service, you should give them an extraordinary tip. And it goes along the spectrum, but it shouldn't be your tip is expected. You do need to earn a tip. And to her point about people have bad days, get it. People have bad days all the time. But I think if you're having a bad day as a server, one, you can apologize. And two, you need to understand that your tips are based on the way that you perform. So you got to try to overcome that bad day with good performance.
My DoorDasher tossed my coffee down because he got mad that I didn't tip on DoorDash. So we need to have an honest conversation about tipping real fast. I'm going to take a seat about this because this is absurd. This is psychotic to me. If you can't tip, you can still order food. If you can't tip, you can still do things. If you can't tip, you can still go out to eat. Tipping is the only thing where people are cowards about it. With everything else, we've had walkouts and boycotts and stuff like that and strikes about it, about minimum wage, about how we should work harder. If you all stop serving at the same exact time, you can actually get some work done. Did you know that? People are saying, well, if you don't want to tip, you're going to have to start paying $20 for a burger. I already paid $20 for a burger, dude.
It's true.
I already paid $20 for a burger. Well, go get the food yourself. I will. I'll walk up and grab it myself. Well, DoorDashers, you should tip DoorDashers because they drive. I don't have a car. What's the point of using DoorDash? They already pay the DoorDashers. Me leaving a tip is out of the courtesy of my heart, and it's a good Samaritan thing to do. I'm not a good Samaritan. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to be like, I'm a good person all the time. No, I'm not always a good person all the time. I'm human. I have days where I can't pay extra, and me giving extra money doesn't make me less of a good person in any capacity. It makes me broke. It makes inflation insane. It makes life difficult. That's what it is. Life is hard. My rent is crazy. My bills are crazy. My phone bill is $150. Everything is tough. Everything is difficult. I have no streaming services, and it's still hard. This is tough. Why is tipping the draw line of everything? Because no one on this planet should toss my DoorDash order for not tipping. No one should do that. That's a bit of an overreaction, if I've ever seen one, to come up to grab the order, waste your own time, waste money, waste 2 hours of your day, because it took 2 hours to get my Dunkin' Donuts here, and come up to me and say, you the person I didn't leave a tip? And I said, huh? And then tosses it and leaves. He was obviously having a bad day. Maybe he was fed up. Maybe he needs another job. I don't know. But DoorDash pays you per order. You can see if they tip you beforehand. Just don't accept the order. Have some other poor sucker bring me my food that doesn't want to get a tip. That's fine by me. I used to DoorDash. I used to be a server at Waffle House, at Big Boys. I used to be a cook at Waffle House. I used to do so many serving jobs. And I will tell you one thing. It is so much better as a person to have a better temper about tipping, because it's not going to change unless you want to get up and do something about it. Unless you want to complain about it yourself. Unless you want to do a mass walkout. Do that. Do a strike. Something like that. You can do that. You have the ability and the option to do that. But no, you want to blame the day-to-day person because you're gaslit by corporations into thinking that we have to pay your wages. It's like the shopping cart situation. You don't have to return a shopping cart. It just makes you a better person to return a shopping cart. But you don't have to. You don't have to tip, but it makes you a better person if you spend the extra money. You shouldn't go out to eat if you don't tip. You can eat whatever you want to. Stop. This emotional gaslighting, this corporation gaslighting about tipping is weird.
Okay, 90% of what that dude said was nonsense, but there's 10% that might have a little bit of value. I do believe that no person who brings you DoorDash should ever throw your stuff on the ground. If they see that there's no tip, they don't have to take that order. But you should be tipping if you're having somebody bring you coffee. But the person who threw his stuff on the ground, they should have their privilege of being able to work at DoorDash revoked, because that's ridiculous. But what he said about you can do whatever you want, you can. And I think people who used to work in the service industry are most passionate about this. So I'm a little surprised that he was saying all that, given that he said he was a server at some point. But servers really don't make much money. $2 or $3 an hour. So they are relying on your tip. So if somebody gives you decent service, you definitely should be tipping them. And I do think going to a restaurant where a tip is expected and planning to not tip is wrong. So there's that.
Out is a privilege, not a right. If you cannot afford to tip 20%, you can't afford to eat out. You can moan and tell me that my employer should be paying me a higher wage all you want, but this is America and that's not what is happening, okay? I get paid $3.63 from the restaurant that I work at. My earnings, my wage comes from tips. The food is cheaper because you're expected to tip on it. You don't deserve to eat out if you cannot afford to tip.
I don't think the food is cheaper. I think food has gotten more expensive. The expected tip has gone up. So, and I don't like her attitude. That kind of attitude is the problem. I don't want to tip a server who's got that kind of attitude. Like, pay me. I deserve it because I work here and I'm giving you a burger. No, like you're supposed to give service, and that service should come with a smile. It should come from a place of wanting to serve someone. So if you're going to say if you can't tip 20%, you shouldn't go out and eat, maybe. I do believe we should be generous. Okay, but if she delivered my food with that attitude, I don't know if I'm giving 20%. Okay, put your thoughts in the comments about that. Like, I would say I'm not tipping less than 10% or really not less than 15% unless the service was horrible. Okay, if you were rude to me, you're not getting a tip. I'm sorry, you're not. And that's because of what you did. I'm not giving you extra if you were rude to me. I don't go out to eat often. So whenever I do, I really love it when I get great service. And I'm going to tip you well. But if you're walking around all snippy and have an attitude, I'm not down with that. But being rude is a whole nother thing. And what she said about people saying, well, you should get paid more. I agree with that. I would love it if some restaurants started saying, hey, we don't accept tips here. And your server is paid well and it's priced into your food. And we expect them to give you good service. Let's just go ahead and put all that out there and get it out of the way. You don't need to tip anything. They're being compensated. And as a manager or owner of the restaurant, I expect them to deliver amazing service. And if they don't, then they're going to be replaced. That's really the way that this should move towards. Instead, it's everywhere you go, people are expecting a tip. Like, I took my family out to get ice cream while we were on vacation a couple weeks ago. You know, it's just a little ice cream shop. There's nothing special about it. They don't even let you try it. Like, you can't get samples. The place wasn't busy. But yet, whenever you get to the cash register, you know, they do that thing where they turn around the iPad and it's like 20%, 25%, 30% tip on ice cream. And then this is what got me. Below that, they had a sign hanging up and it said, these people didn't leave a tip. And it had pictures of villains from all these movies. So it had like Bane, Kylo Ren, all these folks. And so they're trying to guilt you into leaving them a tip, which I think is absurd.
This take is going to make me sound 1,000 years old, but bars and restaurants are out of control. They're out of control. Hear me out. I walk into a bar last night. I'm in Boston, okay? Crowded, absolutely slammed. Walk over to the bar just to order a round of drinks. By a round, I mean 2 drinks. A Coors Light bottle and a Sun Cruiser can. They take my card, they swipe the bill. I get the bill back, it's $26. Okay, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So I inspect the bill. Upon further review, there's an automatic 20% tip included in your bar tab. I'm sorry, you have to provide service in order to get a tip. You did not even say hello when I approached the bar. I said hello. I asked you how you were. You just looked at me flatly and said, what do you want? Okay, so I order my drinks and then you swipe my card and tack on a 20% tip for opening a bottle and cracking a can. And don't get me wrong, I've worked quite literally every position at a restaurant besides like on the line. So I get how tipping works. That's not tipping. Now you're just charging me a fee for having it staffed. No, thank you.
I agree with her. That to me is ridiculous. So she said she got a can and a bottle for that price. I mean, that is insanity. That should have been $4 or $5 each at the most. And then the tip should be optional. If you're walking up to a bar, I've always heard $1 per drink is customary. I mean, maybe it's more than that now, but 20% on a $25 bar tab, I mean, that's crazy. Especially if they say, what do you want? That kind of goes back to the prior conversation. It's if you're not polite and you're not providing a real service, there should be minimal tip, if any. That's like if you go to the gas station and you ask for something behind the counter, they pass it to you. Should they get a tip for that? What's the difference? I don't know. Should they get an automatic 20% tip? Absolutely.
There are tips based on the cost of food and not actual service. For example, let's say I order a
Good question.
steak. I'm at a restaurant for like 15 minutes on my lunch break and I leave. Server is going to get way more money sitting at a diner and all I have is coffee all day. They're serving me all day. Why are we paying a percentage of the cost of the food and not like the duration of the visit? Tips should be based on the service or the duration of the visit or whatever. Like, who came up with this?
It's true. I mean, if you go to a nicer restaurant, they're doing the same thing and you expect that the service would be better because it's a nicer restaurant, but that's not always true. I've been to plenty of nice restaurants and gotten decent service and been to, a little diner and gotten the best service ever. So it does seem like you'd want to be tipping based on the duration, because especially like what she mentioned, if you go to a diner and just get coffee and sit there for hours and you're doing schoolwork and then you get a bill for $3, what, you're just going to tip 20% on that? Yeah, it seems like on that, the time you were there, you should be tipping more than you would at that fancy restaurant because you took up their table for 3 hours and kept them from getting other customers in that might have ordered something that cost more, which would have given them a better tip. Does seem very broken.
I just left Olive Garden to pick up a catering order and they asked me, did I want a tip? Am I tripping? Because I said no. So I ordered a pan of baked ziti for an Easter dinner I'm going to tomorrow. And when I get there, the girl behind the counter is like, oh, it'll be XYZ the cost. And I'm like, I already paid online before I checked out. And she's like, well, I'm not seeing that. And I immediately said, please get the manager because I don't know about y'all. This new staff they have in restaurants these days have zero training. I used to work in restaurants, okay? The customer service is the bars in hell. Manager comes over. And she's like, oh, I see where you paid. There's just a hold there in case you want to add more for a tip. I said, a tip for a to-go catering order? No. And I take my bag and I leave. And as I'm walking out the door, I hear a little behind the counter talking about, that was rude. And I turned around and I said, excuse me, did you say something? And she's like, have a good day. Girl, I heard what you said, but I'm on their turf. I'm not about to get jumped in Olive Garden by the waitstaff. But am I tripping? Like, why would I tip on a catering order, a pan that nobody served me anything? I'm not eating it there. Literally, all you did was put it in the bag. Am I tripping?
I don't think she's tripping. And I think this is one where there's a lot of confusion out there. So that's one where tipping culture is confusing. You get a to-go order. So yeah, it might have come from a nice restaurant, but they're not serving you. They're not taking your order. They're not bringing you refills. They're not bringing you rolls and all that. They're just putting things in a bag. So in my mind, that's no different than going to McDonald's. You place an order at the counter. She did it online, kind of similar. And then you go stand there and somebody hands it to you. Do you tip those people? No, you shouldn't tip those people. Same thing. Now, I asked a friend who used to be in a restaurant business and he was like, oh yeah, well, those people are paid the same as the wait staff. So yeah, they should get tips. I was like, well, that is one where I do feel like that pay is a problem. So if you're the restaurant owner, you should be paying those people more, just like you pay a hostess more because they're not getting tips. But instead, people are expected to supplement their salary. And, maybe it is a thing where we should be giving 10%. I don't know. But I've always thought, yeah, if you're doing takeout, you don't need to tip on that. If you're doing delivery, then you should tip on that. But that's different. They're actually serving you by bringing it out to your house.
My rule is if I stand up to order my food and I have to get it, there's probably not a very big tip in it for you. If you bring me my food, you take my order, absolutely going to give you a tip. If I'm driving through, there's no tip. You're doing your job. I came here to order a thing from you. You came here to sell a thing to me. That's great. That's the whole transaction. There is no extra transaction required. If somebody's doing service for you, you get a haircut, come clean out, that's all fine. Tip all those people. Tip your service providers where that's the norm. But the idea that I go buy a product and you hand me the product from the shelf across the counter and then I'm supposed to give you a tip, that's insane to me. I have the same opinion everybody else has on tip culture. It's out of control.
Yeah, I agree with what he said as a philosophy. If you're sitting down, somebody's coming and taking your order, they're bringing you drink refills, then a tip is appropriate. If you're having to get your own drink, you're having to go stand in line and place an order, and then somebody hands you a bag, you shouldn't be tipping for that. And the same goes for coffee. I know people talk about, oh, you should tip at Starbucks. Why? It's the same thing as McDonald's. Yes, they have to prepare your coffee. So what? I mean, the same thing happens in McDonald's. Whenever you place an order, somebody has to put ice in your cup and then they have to prepare your burger. They have to wrap it up, put it in a bag. It's the same concept, guys. What's the difference? So I know there's going to be a lot of opinions on this one. Put your opinion down below. I'd love to hear it. Tell me why I'm wrong. And then here's another one. So he talked about haircuts. Now, I watched a video where somebody got a $250 haircut and then they were expected to tip 20% on top of that. That is crazy. I've always heard the rule of thumb is if they own their own place, then you don't need to tip them. But if they're renting a booth, then you should tip them. Well, that gets really confusing, but you're paying a high price for a service already. Their salaries should be built into that. And then if you want to tip them because they went above and beyond or whatever, then that should be optional, I think. But there shouldn't be an expectation that you're already paying a high price for a service and then you're going to tip them on top of that. He mentioned cleaners too. So, I don't get my house clean, so I don't know about that. But it does make sense to me that if somebody did an outstanding job, you'd want to tip them, because whenever you pay for a cleaner, you're typically paying for a couple hours or a couple people for a couple hours. And then I've heard people say, oh, my cleaners did a horrible job. Obviously, you wouldn't want to tip them. But if somebody did an outstanding job, it does make sense you'd want to tip them. But what services, like where do we draw the line with services? So I have guys that come and cut my yard. Should I be tipping them? That's a service. I don't think so, but I do think that tipping culture has gotten crazy. People are expecting tips for all kinds of stuff now. But I think that's a good rule of thumb. If you sit down, you should expect to tip 20%. That should be a sliding scale based on the service. So if you get really great service, you might go to 25 or 30. If you get really poor service, it might go to 15 or even 10. And if you have somebody that's nasty, they don't get a tip. Why should they? I'm interested to hear your thoughts. If you like this kind of content, please give me a like and a subscribe. I'm trying to grow my channel, so all that really helps tremendously. It'll help us get out there where other people can see our content. But thank you guys so much for watching this far. Again, let's make gains. Let's be generous people. And let's help out those around us regardless of what's expected. Thank you guys, and we'll see you next time.